Yes, we're live now. We'll take a minute or two and then we can get started.
Are we doing just mics or a camera?
Just mics, no video. Well, I think we can begin. We could probably, I just realized we can also add profile picture. Actually, I don't know how to add a profile picture. Never mind. Just mute this, but anyway, so thanks everyone. This is gonna be a really fun chat. I think Wayne just shared the wrong post. Cool, so I guess we can get started. Well, thanks everyone. Lorepunk, Wartooth, James, thanks for joining. I think it's going to be a really, it's just like a chill chat. We have a lot of thoughts about grants, about growth, about community, but we'll get into that. I think let's start with introductions first. So I can start. I'm Mashal. I head marketing at Octant and have worked with two really, really cool builders and creators in this industry and who've been around for a while. Through our growth fund. And yeah, today's chat is just going to be really getting into, we put out a tweet yesterday actually, just around like how grants have been done and better ways to do them, just because of a lot of sentiment that we've been hearing. And so I thought that could be a fun way to segue into after intro. So we'll get into that and a lot more. And of course, if anyone has questions, we can totally get into that too. We're going to be checking our Twitter, but with that, let's start with intros. Lorepunk, do you want to start? How about yourself?
Hi, thanks, Michelle, and thanks everyone for having me on. I am Lorepunk. I've been in space since 2021, and I am an all-around writer for everything crypto and Web3, everything from writing journalism for NFT Now to ghost tweeting for some brands and founders that you may have heard of. And I love just sort of keeping a close eye on everything in the space and seeing what we can do to build a real healthy space. And that's why I love Octant so much. So I'm glad to be here.
Cool. I guess I can go next. Thanks for having me on, Michelle. I'm James. I'm leading head of impact at Octant, mostly focused on championing the vision and the mission for Octant V2, and that growing the ecosystem and driving a lot of stuff around business development. Previously, I was focused on building the community around Octant, and I've been with the project now for coming up on 4.5 years. Eons for a job in Web3. Looking really very much looking forward to this conversation today about grants and how we can improve them to help grow Ethereum.
I'll go next. I'm Wartooth, and I'm a builder. I'm making a few different apps right now, and I've been supported a lot in the past by Octant. I love public goods. I think grant funding is super important when, apps are what's going to drive so many consumers to all of these beautiful things that we've built. I think those experiences are important, and especially when they're open source and do something good for everybody, they should be funded. And I'm really grateful for Octant for helping me out with, the journeys that I've had with building and education and other things that maybe aren't as investable, but are still super important.
Sweet. So let's get into some of the projects that y'all have been a part of. I think community is something that we get to hear quite a bit. And I feel like we've all had our separate journeys into both this industry as well as just what we consider community. But Laura, I wanted to start with you. You've been quite I'd say like quite deeply involved in some of the most visible communities, including the punks one. Tell us more about your journey and how did you get started? And what do you consider a community for you now? What do you feel like, are there still spaces here that feel safe enough and that feel fun? Or I feel like there was like this magical charm before with a lot of the communities that most of us probably started in this space with. Do you still think that exists?
Oh, the real community definitely still exists. I was, I've always been interested in crypto, but I got involved in earnest in the old Clubhouse days in spring of 2021 when many of us were on COVID lockdown and just sort of exploring Web3. And of course, the NFT bull was, where I cut my teeth in the space. Now, those were some real communities, but even then, there was always people sort of interrogating, challenging what community really means. And, many organizations and groups using the word somewhat disingenuously. But, the communities are still there, amid all of the falsehood, all of the marketing, all of the BS, shall we say. Punks is definitely still a strong community. It has, common language, strong community norms, and OGs with deep history, and that really helps. Oftentimes there's really healthy communities with people who just join up together and start learning together. So I've gotten strong community in meme coin trading spaces where people like, yes, I want to help you learn. I want to help you learn how to do chart analysis. I want to help you get better at making calls and making trades. And, when you're bound in adversity together, you get that real opportunity to form community connections. But I will say that the strongest communities that I'm in are still around art and NFTs. So, Forgotten Runes Wizards Cult is a strong community that I'm a part of, where they've given me, a role, informal stuff to do, working on lore, working on poetry, stuff like that. And, there's a couple of secret discords I'm in private rooms with people that have been there for like 3 years. Watching the markets, saying, hey, why are we dumping? Why are we pumping today? Chatting BS, shall we say, privately in a place where there's the Chatham House ruled and we're not going to screenshot it and put it all over the place. Having that candor, that honesty, learning a bit about people's lives and families. It's still there. And I think this kind of question about community and is real community possible is probably gone on, back in early days of, pre-civilization. People were writing in the Roman era, oh, the children today, they're stupid, they don't know anything, they don't read anything. We were always having these same conversations as culture moves on. So yeah, I think it's still there. It's a little bit harder to find, but if you're patient, you'll find it.
I love that. And I also meme coins for community. That is an interesting one. I feel like meme coins get a lot of bad rep, but that is so interesting.
Well, yeah, talk to those people, with what is that one? I can't remember the name of it now, but the ones that our chick talks about, those have got strong communities.
Love that. James, you have had quite an interesting journey with community, and I'd say has been one of the ways that actually um, got you into the Octant community through the Golem Foundation, I'd say like side and it's the Golem side of things. So tell us more about your journey into community, and I'd love for folks here who are not familiar with your personal lore to learn more about that.
Yeah. So, really, community for me started when I first got out of college. I was doing a lot of personal work and development on myself, and within that was involved in a lot of like yoga and meditation communities in the Bay Area. And just echoing what Lorepunk had said a moment ago, like when there is shared struggle or challenges that you're looking to overcome, it becomes immensely more solvable, and in a way just you're able to create some really strong connections with others that are going through shared experiences. And so I really got in tune with that as I was living in the Bay Area and kind of going through my personal journey there, and then became more inclined to online communities within the Ethereum ecosystem when I got into Ethereum back in like late 2015, early 2016. And Golem was one of those first early communities that I resonated with because it was such a powerful mission at the time that they were championing. And so a lot of complaining and arrogant sort of communications in their forums. Later, they eventually asked me if I wanted to help solve some of the problems that Golem was facing. And so that's eventually how I got my job, was I wouldn't call it trolling, but definitely giving my now boss a piece of my mind, so to speak, from a pretty arrogant perspective. But yeah, that's actually grown into like one of the best relationships that I have now. So yeah, really interesting story and how I have my current role. But yeah, it all comes back to community and really having some sense of shared values and connections that really inspire you to collectively solve problems.
Love that. And I'm so grateful that I think because your journey also led to a lot of a lot of folks that already are here at Octant and how a lot of us joined the community and now we're a part of it. So I think a lot of kudos to you and to leadership who did see through a lot of the passion behind behind your journey there too. I want to welcome Keisha, who has just joined. Keisha, so we just did our intros. Would love for you to introduce yourself too. And the question that I asked everybody was, what community did you start into the space with, and where do you still find a sense of community?
Sorry, Mashal, the audio is going out.
Oh wait, can you hear us? So I think there are some audio/technical issues going on there. Oh, we just lost Keisha, but hi Keisha, we're not doing video, so we're just doing audio spaces, but can you hear us? Don't know if she can. All right. Well, in the meantime, let's go to you, Wartooth. Tell us more about your journey with communities and what you still consider community now.
So I was thinking on what to say about this because community is definitely something where I kind of struggle to see a lasting community. Most of the time, I just see like different people that come together and they kind of recognize each other from different communities. But for the most part, like the NFT communities when I started, which I came in 2020, it felt like really special. It felt like joining this like group of collectors who liked the same things you liked and could maybe find more opportunities because you guys had this thing in common. And that lasted like maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And then after that, till now, has just been like a steady sort of march towards, yeah, it's just like it's extractive. It's meant to just make it look like there's a lot of interest in the coin, make other people coming into the community feel like they shouldn't sell or they should buy or something like that. Give over their money at some point, and then that's sort of the end of the community. You leave when you sell. You don't really like stick around the community except for maybe a few people that you found that you liked. Having run a bunch of communities for different projects in the space and a couple meme coins here and there back in maybe a year and a half ago, yeah, the community was kind of simply there to give people a place to be excited, which can be really good if the product is really good, and it can be really predatory if the product is meant to be a pump and dump, or if it just so happens to become one, which happens a lot in our space. So community to me is a very dangerous word because it used to mean bag holder, if you were a community member. And then it turned into like, no, there's all these great things that come with the community and that you can do with these community. And after we live it, after we get past like the papers and stuff and we build these communities, I think it just goes back to like, well, you're a long-term holder in a project. Is that like that's what you've got in common? And so how you feel about that is going to depend on the performance of the project. Kind of a cynical community take, I know, but
No, that was a very real one. I think my start with community, and I feel like community is also one of those words that's just like it feels vague.
loaded, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But we love real takes here, so
Like there are some good communities, I'm sure. It's just like, I mean, any other product that you purchase, if you buy a really good vacuum cleaner, do you go join them on Twitter and Discord and talk to them about how much you love your vacuum? Like it doesn't happen organically, and when we try to make it happen inorganically, I have yet to see a lot of staying power. But we're gonna see what happens with new products and new communities being built.
I was gonna say my favorite, I guess, in that framing, my favorite probably sense of uh I don't know, camaraderie, community, whatever you want to call it, is going to Reddit threads. Because anytime I have any issue or if I want to search anything at all, I just search the product and I specifically search for Reddit threads because I feel like they've been my best friend when it comes to purchasing decisions. And I don't trust Amazon and every other all of the reviews on different products, but I feel like Reddit people are so real. So if you could, yeah, if you can search right and use it well. But going back to so Keisha, are you able to hear us? I just want to make sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can. If you can.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, it was being strange. And I'm actually trying to join from my computer, so I might leave in a second just to come back in again. But thank you all. Sorry. You had asked a question about how we really got involved with Octant and what the community we came through in was.
I was just asking, like, what community did you join this industry with, and what communities do you still consider you're a part of? And also, of course, like, introduce yourself. Tell us more about yourself and the Fuzzy Cat podcast.
Yeah, okay, thank you. My name is Keisha. I am the founder and the host of the Fuzzy Cow podcast, which is a crypto news podcast and kind of like a also crypto digital financial literacy platform. Really advocate for not only, keeping people who are native to the space updated on what's going on in a non-convoluted way, but also really kind of creating a safe and welcoming space that's easy to understand and intelligible for those that want to be involved in cryptocurrency or just even blockchain and just wonder what it's about, whether it's passive or active, whatever their interest is, just a space they can come and learn. And we are on season 2. It's actually sponsored by Octant and presented by Octant. So that's been super, super exciting. And Octant is the current community that I feel like I'm a part of and most a part of, and definitely the one that I amplify most in my travels and then, just my work, evidently. But I do think that the question of who I came into Web3 is interesting. So I kind of came into Web3 as an individual, but I did find a collective of women. And I think that for me, women have always just kind of been my North Star in this space. I mean, I have a lot of male colleagues and a lot of male allies as well. But I think that needs of women like F3 and stuff are where I've seen, which was the name of the community. F3 was the name of the community that I came in with. And then you have like HerDAO, you have SheFi, of course, but those are like the communities that I was kind of like acclimated to Web3 into, learned about from, and macro out just in tech, how I kind of got into tech, just like Google Women Tech Makers and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, yeah, it totally does. And we're going to get into the grant side of things because I know all of you are grantees from the Octant Growth Fund. But let's go to James for a second because I know James is also going to leave in a couple of minutes. James, tell us more about V2. Tell us more about the general side in terms of how V2 and Octant is going to power growth. And yeah, would love your take on that before we go into specifics around grants and start nerding out on that side.
Yeah, totally. So I think the foundation for everything and what we're trying to build is this idea that we've been championing since the beginning, which is like this win-win sort of ecosystem. So with that, what we're trying to do is we're trying to build the tools so that any ecosystem within Ethereum can grow sustainably. And so on the growth side of things, we see that primarily as how are you sourcing your capital to grow your ecosystem, and then how are you allocating that capital to grow. And so we're building tooling on both sides of that so that any ecosystem can plug and play into a specific sort of program that will allow them to grow based upon like what their needs are. So that's deploying some capital into DeFi, generating yield, and then running some kind of growth campaign based upon that yield that you generated. There's a lot of flexible ways in which you can do that. Don't want to get into too much to the specifics because it can get a little hairy or complicated by just like listing a bunch of different examples. But basically that's how we see it. Is we want to create this flexible tool set for ecosystems to grow with some of the most powerful tools in Web3. Now, the caveat with that is that there's also this big thing that ultimately we're after within the Octant team, and we see that there's this funding issue across Ethereum. Funding right now, many different areas are underfunded. There's definitely some public goods that I would imagine are potentially overfunded, and that comes from the issue of both ETH at the mainnet level, and then all these different L2s are more or less paying their infrastructure and other operational costs to these programs and teams in a fragmented way. And so our goal with all of this is to essentially build a tool so that any ecosystem can grow sustainably, but there's also a small contribution from each of those ecosystems to help us collectively create this funding graph that is going to fund what we need to fund within the Ethereum ecosystem, so that everyone building on top of it is able to enjoy the competitive advantage that Ethereum has. And so basically it's this win-win scenario where we are trying to give you the tool set to grow your ecosystem sustainably, and then every ecosystem that uses that tool is contributing a small piece towards funding what we need to collectively fund.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And to me, it feels, I mean, okay, fine, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I feel like from the sustainability side, and even just from like, I feel like it's a no-brainer, right? Instead of your budgets reducing every time, and we're seeing a lot of the impact of that. Just being smarter about your capital and growth, and there's probably no better way. And I think like that part that still surprises me is how a lot of times, like with our team, it's a little bit different because marketing, community growth, everyone's really in sync with what we want to do. But I think a lot of programs aren't, and they're not really even optimizing their grants and their growth programs the way they should be. And it feels like there's a lot of chaos going on. And that was part of the premise. So I had written out a tweet, thanks to James who encouraged me to, because we chat about grants so much, and we've been hearing chatter from certain ecosystems and programs and people in general who think grants aren't effective, and then they don't work, and they're a drain when it comes to budgets. And I have a very different perspective on that. Of course, a lot of that perspective comes from having researched so many different grants programs. I'm one of the co-authors of the State of Web3 Grants Report, and I have probably looked at every major grants program there is in the industry, have spoken to operators and people that are running them, and have tried to figure out what the best ways to run these programs are. And in doing so, realized a lot of issues that were with programs. And the tweet has been interesting because it's gotten a lot of traction and a lot of thoughts from folks who've received grants and who've been on the operator side. But a few different challenges that I think are very, very prevalent right now with programs are, I think the resource part is one, right? You have people that are running programs, and there's way too many applications and operations in there. It's kind of like you have an overburdened team with unrealistic expectations from that capital. And I think when you collectively look at a sum, yeah, it looks really grand. Like, okay, we gave out like millions of dollars in grants funding. But if you hyper focus on the actual numbers and on the individual experience, it is very different. And oftentimes there's not enough support, and there aren't enough layers. And that's actually why I wanted to, I'm so glad we have both Keisha, you, and Wartooth, because I wanted to get your take from a grantee perspective, right? You've been around different ecosystems. What have been some of the challenges that y'all have experienced being on the applicant side and being on the receiving side of grants?
Did you want to go first, Wartooth?
No, not unless you do. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I can just say I think that you really kind of summed it up. A lot of it is just, the initial just tensions that come with even getting started, whether it's lack of clarity even around what requirements are. In a lot of grant programs, especially online, they do like to say that they're agnostic, or that it's, pretty open to different presentations of projects, right? But a lot of times there's just like a lack of clear expectation. And there's a lack of understanding of like what the end result will be, especially in terms of like distribution and of like funding, right? Like sometimes it can be very unclear when you come to a ecosystem or a foundation with the project, and you say, these are my timelines, these are my objectives, this is the way I would like to do this in this way. It can be unclear initially if their funding pattern matches up with that. And I feel like a lot of time it's often, there's conversations that are spent being had that maybe are not most conducive to really getting to the real root of what would be a great program or how we could get this thing going, because of just, again, little tensions in communication and onboarding and stuff like that.
Well, I think your tweet did do a super good job of kind of explaining a lot of the pitfalls that come with it. And for me, I think it's a lack of transparency, I guess, of what you're actually advertising when you have a grant program. Like, are you offering credits? Are you just trying to get builders to come and build for a few months? Or are you trying to support like apps that you like on your ecosystem long term? Because like things like hackathons or things like, builder rewards that are pretty small in monetary amounts and pretty easy to get, or you can get them pretty quickly, they just don't sustain you long enough to really ever make a return. Like if you only needed $10,000 to make a product, you probably would have figured out a way to make the product. Most people are, if they're going to try and make something functional, they need really long-term support and they need someone that can help them. Octant does fantastic with that. Just as you know, I've had so many different mentors and people that have helped me that if you guys can't help me so quickly in a group chat, like you'll throw me in with someone that can, and within 2 or 3 calls, like I'm unstuck again. So having that with Octant has been great. I haven't really had that experience in other ecosystems that are trying to attract builders with grant funding or grant programs. But what I have noticed is doing calls with grants operators and then finding out like, well, it's not really a monetary grant. It's more of a like, you can use our stuff sort of grant, or we're not interested in funding long term. It would be like a $5,000 kind of thing. Both of those things I think are going to be wasteful in the long term, or when we look back on it, see that you kind of either had to support something long term and like how do you decide what to back, or you had to do tons of little short term stuff and just see what survives. And right now 90% of the stuff doesn't survive, so it is kind of a sink, but not if you're trying to build something long term and high quality. Then I think it's grants are going to be the only way to get people to really build around your ecosystem.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, we do really try to be as helpful as we can and supportive at Octant. It was part of why we had built the accelerator program, because we felt like anywhere we looked, regardless of which ecosystem people were in, there were just so many layers of support that were missing. And you can't just, even if it is like incentives are one thing, but even if it's direct financial support, there's a lot more that's needed to help builders get to the next stage and literally what you said, right? Get unblocked. And I think without that, it's a little bit longer of a journey. And yeah, I think just like planting those seeds and giving enough time and support in terms of nurturing environments and ecosystems that lead to hyper-productive growth and evolution from there it makes a big difference. Lorepunk, can you still hear us? Are you back with us?
I am back with you. If I try to open any other app, it crashes. So
This is a sign from the tech gods that you just got to stay chatting, stuck on this app.
no, it's fine.
Tell us your perspective with grantees and working with ecosystems too. What's your take on this?
Well, I have found that a lot of times grant programs, as many other people have been saying, grant programs tend to get a little bit of interest and, some good engagement, but they don't always offer persistent growth or resilience or depth or capacity building to the space or the ecosystem that they're in. One good example, there was an amazing art contest grant thing, award thing from Optimism. We Love the Art, which was an amazing thing, some amazing stuff submitted, big prizes given, but there hasn't been much momentum from it. And so there's sort of a disconnect sometimes between funding allocation, especially community funding allocation, and long-term impact. However you're going to measure that, whether that's governance token goes up or we're getting a bunch more developers into our ecosystem or whatever it is, it doesn't always work that way. Which is why when you approached me and were telling me about Octant, the hair stood up on the back of my neck, because what it is a flywheel that aligns incentives between people who want to engage with the project and people who want to make sure that project is growing long term, and using DeFi to do so. You know, you're not spending down your treasury. You don't have to get precious about it. You're spending yield, and you're incentivized as a participant to choose projects based on impact, however that's defined by your community, rather than a beauty contest or a popularity contest or orchestration or sibling or anything else. So you know, it's a bit kind of dispiriting to see what happens in many grant programs, and I'm really excited that this is offering an alternative.
Absolutely, and I love that. Less vanity metrics and a lot more real change. And yeah, absolutely. I think the incentives part was one that we paid a lot of attention to. So over the last 8 epochs that we've had, we have done a lot of testing, and we have a lot of insights from how people respond, how they engage, what keeps people interested, and then the difference between what people say and then what translates to action, which has been the most surprising one. And just very eye-opening too in terms of in terms of actually seeing the allocations happen, and we, just keeping a close eye on the allocation windows. But on the flip side, I think so. This is something that we had a stream. What was it, on Tuesday? Yeah, so like 2 days ago, when Ben, who's our head of product, mentioned and was just sort of highlighting how a lot of people just don't like to read, and so how do you even make better? How do you improve the experience of informed decision making when people are making allocation decisions, and how do you keep people engaged? Like, there's just so much that we can bring. But the incentives part is one that really, really highlights even rewarding a lot of community members who are interested in rewarding them in a way that is effective and productive and leads to better long-term outcomes when it comes to funding decisions. But without getting into like the grants and allocation side, I kind of want to switch tracks a little bit and get into growth. So each of you have sort of had a very different journey in terms of legitimacy and also building and growing your own projects and what you're building. So for anyone who's listening and is interested in growth as well, I'd love your take on how do you think a builder can grow if they're starting a project today, or if they already have a project and they are trying to level it up. Is there any advice that you have for anyone who's watching or listening right now?
Is that for any of us?
All of you. I want to hear all of your takes.
Well, I mean, again, to be a little bit spicy about this, I think the main thing is, to be smart from the very beginning and make sure that, if possible, that you're bootstrapping that project, or at least that when you're getting funding for that the agreements that you make aren't geared towards max extraction from your community to benefit the pockets of your investors. People get really, really panicky because they're like, oh my goodness, I have to pay these people back, and I have to pay them a large rate of return really fast. And so they're not going to necessarily innovate. They're going to go for what works, where the volume is, which is why we've got 8 billion different pump fund clones going on right now. And they're just going to go for what they know works. There's not going to be a lot of room for innovation and for risk taking. But, if you are bootstrapping it, or, you have some funding that is not geared towards extraction in that way, maybe funders and collaborators with a longer term vision, then you can grow in a way that is sane and is persistent over the long term. And basically, you need to find product market fit, and it needs to be in the blue ocean. It needs to be something that people need and that isn't being competed to death by 8 billion other things. And, if you find something that actually benefits communities in the world as a whole, it's probably going to work better than yet another pump and dump meme coin, or some kind of platform, or even another blockchain that is claiming to save and resolve a lot of problems, but is really just air. So you really have to design it from the beginning to be sane, to be relevant in the long term, I guess.
I just want to say too, like, to that point, when I was speaking about like lack of clear expectations, and then how that also aligns with like funding patterns and stuff like that, I do think that those are the bedrocks to the foundation of success and sustainability. I do think that there is an understanding, unless you're utilizing grants full time to fund every aspect of your operation, which if that's what you're doing, okay, cool. But in the short term, for those shorter term grants that were mentioned and stuff like that, I do think there's an understanding of or at least for me, where my project is concerned, is like, how can I show the biggest impact I have, and how can I show, what my ability to expand on and articulate an idea, with just a little push is, right? Because I would think that in the long run, where crowdfunding is concerned, or where even investment is concerned, being able to prove that with money that's relatively no real stakes attached, because it is a grant. It's not like you have to pay it back. It's not accruing interest or anything like that. The payback is in the good works and the deeds that you do to amplify the community. But in the long term, I think it's a really great way, and a really, to act as like an incubator, basically, and for you to really prove yourself. And one thing I really appreciated about Octant as well is that, on that same note, Octant is really great about, as a grantee, like letting you say, okay, this is what it's going to be, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. Please, please look at me while I do. Again, like for me, please watch me while I do, and collaborate with me on this. And uh let me lend this to the community, right? Let this be my contribution as a member. So I don't know. I think that, the expectations around grant funding, what it can be used for, how it can be utilized, what the impact long term, not just for the, program that, or the community that you got the grant from, but for the actual grantee is or is not. A lot of that is, I feel like, still very self-determined in a way. And I think that Octant does a great way of like nurturing and cultivating that in a very positive way, so that it's a positive experience, or at least has been for me, more so than, again, like a strained one, or one where I feel like either party fell short or has fallen short.
So I guess just me left. Awesome takes on growth, and I think I agree with both of you guys that on one side, there's growth is as difficult for somebody that's a recipient of a grant than a recipient of VC funds or your own funds or angel investor funds. No matter what, growth is really hard. And I think that you either win on distribution, right? You can reach a ton of people at once and go viral on a ton of things, or you have a lot of reach and people talking about your product and you achieve growth that way. Or it's just all on speculation, right? It's just hype, it's just air. So making sure that you have a good product, I think, is instrumental to being able to grow, especially now that ideas have never been easier to execute almost on, with AI tools. Like beforehand, it was pretty easy to execute on your ideas, or at least to pitch your ideas, not to execute on them. But it was easier to pitch your ideas, and now you can make demos and stuff with AI that can make your investability look really good. But I'm seeing a ton of tweets and a ton of threads and a ton of ideas about apps you could build with all these tools. But what I'm not seeing is a ton of apps. And that has to come, like even on something that just came out, like Believe, where it should be something that lets, retail investors back startups, but with meme coins. It's a great concept, but as long as it's still speculative and there's no product, all the growth is just based on air. So I think just for anybody that's looking to grow, you can distinguish yourself and make sure that you last long term by focusing on your product and making sure that it's real, and not just a deck about your product or a pitch about your product or a grant application about your product, but focusing in on your product as much as you can. And that's definitely for me where I'm starting to see more of like, okay, this is where the real work is happening.
I love that take. Focus on apps and the product, and I'd say a big focus on distribution, because a lot of times, and I can share more from the decision maker slash like the grant operator perspective, right? I see all these applications that are a lot more about what folks want to do and not enough about how they can prove what they've done. And a lot of times it's that differentiating factor, right? Where don't just wait for a grant or a pocket of funding to come through. And yes, those are extremely important. I'm not discounting that in any shape or form, but builders build and grow and get creative, especially when they're under-resourced. And some of the best builders really just sort of, they become so good, they're too hard to ignore a lot of times. And so I think a lot of times that's when, like, it's a different conversation when you apply to a grant program saying, you already have traction, you already have done experiments, you understand what's working with your users, or your community, versus being like, I have this hypothetical idea, I think this can work, even if there's a clear need. Just your track record with what you can execute on and what you can ship and what you're actually building at the end of the day is going to be the clearest marker of everything. And we still have a long way to go before we start seeing, at least, yeah. I think that the app shortage is definitely one that I feel, and the distribution side, and just a clear lack of understanding too in terms of how to get to folks.
It's hard. When you actually try it, like, oh man, this is tough. And I think distribution is so key too. It's just that there's so few products right now that are real and tangible and you can touch them and use them,
Mm-hmm.
that I do think that that's going to be a big differentiator coming up, is just having something that isn't just a plan, or isn't just a set of documents. It's real. You can touch it. And there's tools now to be able to help even non-technical people get to that point. It's just hard. You just really got to fight and sort of level up, find where you're missing information, find where your marketing's not working, or it's too expensive, or it's just not catching traction, and just use all the tools we've got to attack those inefficiencies. And then I think you're in so much of a better place to grow and get grant funding.
100%. And speaking of that, shout out to Dragon Academy and your social game, because I see the account replying and responding and being so active. And every time I see that, I'm like, oh, I love this.
He's so goofy. That's my intern, Knight. Shout out to Knight. He's so fun on that account.
Yeah, he's definitely on it, and that's been really great to see. So before we do wrap up, because I know we're at a sort of a time, tell us one link or socials, like where can folks find you and what you're building? But my final question will be more of like, how can how can people get to what you're building? How can they learn more? How can they really use your apps or your podcasts or your newsletters? Like, I think we have quite a cool community here and a really solid community of builders. So just, please feel free to shill openly.
Well, I will go first. First of all, I want to thank Octant Growth Fund for believing in me, believing in storytelling, and I'm going to be, coming out with a few more bits and pieces, some long form stuff, getting into the weeds of the power and potential of Octant and how it works. But I am a general all-round storyteller, and it's important for every project or culture movement in this space. And you can see my work and my portfolio by going to my Twitter account, which is Lorepunk, DOTETH. So that's lorepunk.eth. And please do slide into my DMs. They are open.
You can find me on Twitter as well. I'm at Queen Wartooth, and that's probably where you can find an update on the things I'm building. Right now, my crypto-focused app is Dragon Academy, and it's a gamified education platform that takes people from not knowing anything about crypto at all to being able to find paid work in our industry. I think that's the best way to onboard and keep users, is show them a way to make money. And I found just a few ways to reliably make money, and they all involve work. So I'm gonna, I've got education coming out. Our app is built. We're good. We're just kind of tweaking the last little bits of this path to make sure that the value we're providing is realistic and can take somebody like my aunt or my grandma or something and bring them through into crypto. I've also got some other stuff cooking, so if you want to follow, see what I'm building, see what I'm shipping, at Queen Wartooth.
And you can find me, my personal handle, at THEMFN, like music, fashion, and news editor. So at the MFN editor, or you can find the Fuzzy Cow podcast at THE Fuzzy Cow podcast on pretty much everywhere. And the show comes on YouTube, where again you can catch season 2, which is presented to everybody by Octant. And we are going to continue to educate. We do have some very exciting alternate programming that's coming out that's not just podcast or audio visual based. It's actually community based and engagement based in terms of like offering courses and curriculums. So, stay tuned for that to learn more about that. We'll be coming to a city near you, but yeah, that's where you can find me. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And a few reminders just around some of the stuff we got coming up. So we are going to be sharing a lot more about Octant V2 and what we're building. We are going to be having weekly live streams just around different aspects of what we're building and how it leads to growth. Yeah, just using DeFi for sustainable growth feels like a no-brainer. I feel like anyone, well, I don't want to say anyone, but it just, instead of having your budgets be reducing every time, just focusing on being able to experiment, engage your community, and being able to do that in a sustainable way can be really, really fruitful. We've done it, we've proven it, and now we're opening that up and building a lot more for other ecosystems to be able to do that in a way where everybody wins. And then a final reminder, so we are going to be in Berlin Blockchain Week in a couple weeks from now. So if you're there, let us know, hit us up. There definitely are a few events we are going to be at. We're going to be sharing those on our socials. And we just announced a major security workshop that we're organizing with the cool folks at Revoke Cash. There's a lot of security scams going on in this industry, just a lot of crypto, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Like, I feel like scammers are getting smarter and more sophisticated, and so it helps to be more secure and more informed. And so we're going to be hosting a 1-hour workshop online where you can learn how to become more secure, best practices, what you need to do in terms of tools, and how you can become a lot more safer as you navigate this industry and use wallets and really just focus on becoming more secure. So please sign up to that. That's going to happen on May 28th. I hope I'm not getting the date wrong. Let me just confirm the date. May 27th at 11 a.m. Eastern. So there we go. But yes, please sign up. I think it's going to be a really good one, and I feel like really, really important. And with that, thank you so much, everyone, for listening in, for joining us, and seeing some of the replies, and that's been really good to see. And until next time, thank you, Wartooth, thank you, Keisha, and thank you, Lorepunk.
Thank you so much for having me, Mashal.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.